together today, and I very much enjoyed hearing the earlier conversations and would like to build upon them as I get into my topic. It was great to hear about the surfing coming to Tahiti. And of course, I think you showed a picture of Duke Kahanamoku, seen as the father of surfing from Hawaii. And it'd be, of course, the first World Cup. We saw Carissa Moore from Hawaii also win the Olympic gold. So it'd be great to join you there. And we hold many surf tournaments here too. And I think we have to think about balancing nature with that challenge, but it seems possible with what you shared. Also, I really appreciated learning about the Rahui Center. That's very similar to what we have here with the Ahupua'a, which is the center of the conversation that I'll share with you today, but also Nathan Bennett's perspective of blue justice. And that's a big part, of course, of what we're describing today. So thank you so much for inviting us. And your room there looks very similar to our room at the University of Hawaii as well. So everyone can still hear? Ça va? Pas mal? C'est bien?
Yeah, fine.
D'accord. Okay, all the hands are up. Merci beaucoup. And so what I'll be discussing today is abundance and aloha, an Ahupua'a model to balance and build the Blue Continent Revolution. And we'll be looking at Kaiāulu, Hoʻokipa Impact Studio inaugural cohort that took place that we were able to participate in. And when we look at the research that I'll be sharing with you, what we focus on, especially coming out of COVID, was that culture is the core, commerce. And more importantly, community-centered, multidisciplinary movement was really the essence behind all of the economic activity of what we're looking for. And in our research, it was direct participatory research methodology. And what we were able to do was think about, very importantly, what many of you were sharing earlier in the Blue Justice, but also going back to the essence of Hawaii. And there's a Hawaii proverb that says, He ali'i ka aina, he kawa vale ke kanaka. And that, of course, is the land is the chief and the people mere servants. And that, of course, is the essence of what we're looking at here in Hawaii, is that as we look forward to what we consider the future of the economy, but also the quest for equality for all, it's transformative tourism. It is really making sure that we decide what matters most and make sure that we, the people, guide the process going forward. And what we began to do was we rooted everything in what Nathan also shared, but we looked at the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, the UNDRIP. And looking at the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, the most important concept is the free, prior, informed consent. And so what was so exciting is we decided going forward, how would we measure tourism? Because Waikiki Beach, that normally was filled with millions of people coming in from all over the world, was just us. So we decided, what do we want going forward? And there was effort by two movements, Travel to Change and the Native Hawaiian Hospitality Association. And it allowed anyone in Hawaii to come up with a proposal of what they wanted to create. So we came up with one, Understanding Hawaii, through undertaking action to achieve the 2030 Agenda and the Paris Agreement in Hawaii, reimagining our relationship with nature. So we began with the most important symbol of Hawaii, Diamond Head, or Leahi. I don't know if anyone there in the room remembers Leahi or Diamond Head anywhere from any tourism photos, but it is the giant volcano that is at the end of Waikiki Beach. And we decided to come up with the process because we have a Leahi Millennium Peace Garden that we created at the World Youth Congress since 1999. And it's a Hawaiian dry land forest with plants and trees that all have a purpose. And what the goal is that's then the first place where any tourist comes. And normally they would come just to climb the mountain. But what we do is have a process where we meet with them and we provide place-based education and positive possibilities of engagement for all interested to be involved. And also for them to make a positive impact in Hawaii and throughout Moana Nui Akea, or the Pacific. And we know that Hokulea Canoe was just visiting you there in Tahiti. And so we want people to understand that really our island Earth is very precious and fragile. And by living the way voyagers do on the canoe, on the waka, then we can see a new way of imagining our relationship with nature that very much is in balance based on our indigenous cosmologies of both of the countries that we live in, Hawaii and Tahiti. And so what we decided to do was create over 24 courses covering major international human rights, climate justice, regenerative circular economy, and sustainable development, rooted in the Kanaka Maoli philosophy and principles, but also then connecting that to the global goals that have been agreed upon with the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement. Because as we're gathered here in our beautiful locations on different sides of Oceania, we know we really only have 7 years to take action before we place irreversible harm on our natural environment. So the park serves as a space where we have people do 3 things. The first thing that we have them do at the Leahi Millennium Peace Garden is we teach them about every plant there and the purpose it has. And so there's many different aspects. One very much relates to your story you were sharing earlier about the Olympics. And we actually have the tree where the surfboards were created and crafted out of. So that is very exciting to many people who want to come to Hawaii to learn to surf. But we show them this is the original tree where the surfboards came from. We also talk to them about all aspects. This is a conference of knowledge and enlightenment. So we have the kukui nut. The kukui nut, of course, was the oil from that nut is what we use to light the candles, but it's also known as enlightenment. And many people get their tourist lays from there, but we try to give them a deeper understanding and knowledge of all of these important aspects that are around them, because too often today's people don't make a connection with nature, and everything that they wear and everything that they own, of course, comes from nature. And so it's to rebuild that relationship with the land and the ocean. And so we also explain even there's a Hawaii cotton, very similar to our shirts that we're all wearing there. And some of you have some great Aloha shirts on today. And that is pointing out the role of that, as well as the mats. I see you have your palm trees that you've woven in, but we were able to also, we have an amazing lauhala tree that we gather all of the different parts and then weave mats with that, as well as earrings for women and hats and many other things. So what we try to do, connecting tourists as well as local communities who also have not been as involved as was shared about Kanaki and New Caledonia earlier today, is to really reconnect people. So that first half of the time together, we share about the history of Hawaii, we share about the way the world was, but also how those values really are the way to go forward into the future. In the second half, we go down to another part of the park that has a whole bunch of quotes from Nobel Peace Prize laureates. And there we teach about the UN Global Goals, the SDGs, because those are very important, as they're no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender justice, clean water, renewable energy, decent work, economic growth, looking at innovation and infrastructure, decreasing and reducing inequalities, looking at responsible human rights, cities and communities, as well as responsible consumption and production, climate action, life below water, life on land, peace, justice, strong institutions, and of course, finally, partnerships, which is one great way that we're gathering here today, but also the Paris Agreement. The Paris Agreement is so valuable because it says what we have to do in order for us to survive and be able to move forward. And we all know in Oceania that 1.5 is absolutely essential for us to continue to be able to live in close harmony with nature and not be overwhelmed with sea water rise, as well as coral bleaching and other impacts that we face in the blue Pacific that we all depend on. The other aspect, of course, though, is the UN treaties that exist around human rights. So we do teach about the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, but most importantly, the UN Declaration, but also business and human rights, to give that framework on how corporations must consider the indigenous culture and include that. So these are some of the things that we share. And in the work that we do, we focus on conservation and land management, natural resources and ecosystem restoration, species protection, health and wellness, history and language, agricultural practices and food production, green energy, ecotourism, voluntourism. Because after we do the teaching, then everyone who's gathered actually gets to participate and work on the land for 30 minutes, and then even plant an indigenous flora and fauna, and then be able to see how their tea leaves and many of the things that they plant continue to grow after they've left. The idea is enhancing and enriching community in Hawaii and putting the unity into community. And so this is one aspect that we focus on. The other important point, though, is that this model has been so successful. It's looking at each Ahupua'a. It's looking at the ridge of the mountain down to the reef and seeing it in sort of a pie shape, which is very similar to what one of the earlier presenters shared, looking at the Rahui. And so as we look at that here in Hawaii, it's allowed us to reimagine, but also create community councils. So we're not only having a theory that how we move in the post-COVID time, but we're actually having this first cohort from the Travel to Change group to see how we do that, and then to be able to make sure as tourists come that they begin to see Hawaii in a new way, not just as a place to come and frolic, to get married, to play golf, or to shop, but to understand that they have a kuleana, and in Hawaii that's a responsibility to leave the place where they're coming better than when they found it. And so we've even began commercials, and you can see those on Hawaiian Airlines, as I know that goes between our two beautiful islands, that are about malama. And malama is about taking care. And that, of course, is the message, and the area that I wanted to end on is Hokulea Canoe, which came to visit you a little bit earlier this month. They will be going on around the Oceania to every island. And the idea there is to continue that philosophy of malama honua, to take care of our Mother Earth and each other, because we really must develop a sense of solidarity among our cultures to understand that we're all together. And this begins also with many of our economies being rooted in tourism, to make sure that the tourist understands that there's more of a reciprocal relationship rooted in respect and rights, and not one of extractive. It's one of a mutual exchange. And so one other aspect I'd like to share is...
Yeah, shortly, please. Sorry, Georgia, because we are really late. So maybe if you can maybe conclude, summarize a little bit, because
Sure.
Very interesting talk, but we missed time. Sorry for that.
Yeah, no problem. I thought the other went on for much longer, and I looked at my time, and I haven't done 10 minutes yet. But I will conclude, and I look hopefully to meet with you all in person in the future. But the one last thing I'll say is, with Hokulea and Malama Honua, from the point that they departed on 45 years ago, that's where we actually built a star compass and planted the koa tree. And on this Earth Day, just last month, we planted over 100 koa trees, which are the essence of the canoe, of the waka. And that is the space then where they also built a star compass to teach about navigation to future voyagers. So as we planted these trees and these seeds, they will become canoes, and we hope that we'll continue sailing between Hawaii and Tahiti and sharing knowledge as we are today. And thank you very much, and mahalo.
Thank you very much. Sorry for that.